Hello and good afternoon. My name is Enrique Hasso. I'm the director of TMDSAS and the outreach strategist for the Texas Health Education Service here in Austin, Texas. You'll notice that I'm not Sulema, who usually hosts these sessions, but I am filling in while she's taking well-earned vacation time. So I am here to address any questions that you might have. I see that several folks have already jumped into the chat. This is a live Q&A session, so if you have any questions for me, I'm very happy to address them. So we're just going to go ahead and kick it off and get started with a few questions from Leanne. All right. Hi, I have some questions. Your advice is greatly appreciated. Thanks for joining us, Leanne. For activity descriptions, what links do I put for each activity? For example, for volunteering, do I add a link for the general volunteer website? That's a great question. I'm going to go ahead and open my version of my application so that we can look at this together. Give me 1 second here. All right, and let's go into our activities section. All right, here we are. So in your activities section, here, for example, we have our academic recognition. Some of our sections have 300 characters max. Academic recognition is one of those. There's only 300, but if we look at activities like leadership, this is set to 500 characters max. So make sure that you note that it's for characters, not words. If you do have enough characters left over to include a hyperlink for your activities, awesome. If it's an activity that's probably not very well known by the schools, that's actually a great way to kind of show where you've been working. But if you're volunteering at a place like Habitat for Humanity or a very well-known community engagement type of activity, then perhaps you don't need to include a link there. I clicked on the wrong one, I'm sorry. So for community engagement, we do ask several questions. We do not require a link. If you would like to include one, you would include it down here. And this is one of those activities that you have 500 characters. So hopefully that helps. All right. Do I add a follow-up question from Leanne? If I do not have a link or if there's no online record, do I add a PDF with my contact information for my supervisor? You can actually just drop in the contact information for the supervisor, include the supervisor name, if that's something that you would like to do. Again, limited characters, so if it's something you'd like to include, you're definitely welcome to it. Another follow-up question: for research publication links, do I attach the email when the abstract was accepted, or is there no online link? So again, you would be able to drop in the link if it's already published. There is no option in the activities section to add any documentation. So you mentioned adding a PDF or adding some additional documentation. You don't have that ability on this page, as you can see. So the information that you put in here is something that your evaluators at each one of the schools is going to look over and possibly include in your interview. I've heard several schools where they actually share some of the activities that were happening in the interviews. There was an example one year, this was for a medical school, where the applicant was actually one of the folks that does the pig wrangling in the local rodeo. And so they actually saw that as a great opportunity for like engaging with their community and seeing how they are raising scholarship funds for local students in the FFA. And so it might not seem like it was a big activity, but it was actually a large point of discussion during the interview. And so that was something interesting. So yeah, whatever you include in these activity sections, just be ready to talk about those in the interviews. If you have something else to add, you do have up to 500 characters per section. And don't forget that does include your spaces. All right, we got a question from Justin. If I took an institutional credit by exam, not AP, as a sophomore, will my status still be PF? Actually, you would include that in your sophomore year, and there is a credit by examination designation that you can use. I'm going to go back to the application here under college coursework. I'm going to go ahead and add a course. let's say this was a credit by examination. Let's say this was for my English 316K class, which would be British literature. Under course area, since that is English, we would mark that it's an English course. And for transcript grade, this would likely be credit. And that would be 3 hours. And I won't have taken that course again, so I just go ahead and hit add. And that's how you can actually add a course that you've taken as credit by examination. All right. Also, if I graduated in 3 years and had 31 hours of AP credit, hey, kudos to you. That's a lot of AP credit. I understand that it would still count the first 30 of the status of freshman, but then would I not have any courses as a senior? That would be correct. So all AP courses will count as pre-freshman coursework. And then you'll enter your sophomore year, your junior year coursework. You graduated as a junior. What you actually end up seeing, and I'm sorry, I don't have an example here, but once you actually go through your activities, this is kind of like halfway completed because I haven't completed this application that I have. We actually create a chronology of activities. So what this does is it actually lines up all of your colleges attended, each term that you attended, all of your activities, your community engagement activities, your employment activities, and everything into one long list. And the schools will actually be able to use this to kind of see what you've been engaged in and what each semester looks like. So on your end, education might end, by your junior year, but then it's up to you to fill in what that senior year is going to look like. So perhaps you're working full-time as a scribe, or you're doing additional volunteer work. You're maybe going into graduate school to do a one-year master's program. That's up to you. But as far as it comes to entering stuff into your application, if you graduated as a junior, you would just end your coursework as a junior. All right, Jillian, welcome. For planned courses, I'm not sure of the exact courses I'll be taking spring 2024. Is it okay to leave the term with no courses? Excellent question. I'm actually going to show you how to enter planned coursework. So we're going to go ahead and go here. I'm saying that I'm going to be at University of North Texas for spring 2024. Perfect. All right. Oh, I did not add a term for that. I'm sorry. Let's go back here. Again, this is not a fully completed application, but it's helpful to kind of show what this might look like on your end. All right, so now we have a term for spring 2024 at University of North Texas. We're going to hit save. All right, I see what it's doing. So the error message that I'm getting right now is because I haven't entered each term for each school, so it's giving me an error. So if you could use your imagination with me, Jillian here, that this would be spring 2024 under the planned enrollment section. All right, so when you're entering your coursework for a planned course, you'll actually select, whatever term you're going to be in, that information. Perhaps right now you know that it's going to be a biology course, and we don't have a course number. You could just type in XXX just to fill in that section. Course name, you could say something like to be determined, or if it's part of a sequence and you know already that's going to be like biochemistry 2, you can go ahead and type that in. For your course area, we know this one's going to be a biology lecture course. And then you won't have the ability to enter transcript grade, but you can enter how many coursework hours that's going to be. So yeah, just go in and mark that whatever course you're taking is going to have is something that's to be determined. The schools already know that planned coursework is something that's still pending, may still change depending on which courses are offered in the spring, and a lot of stuff changes. So yeah, the schools very much know that planned coursework is something that's going to be in flux. And that's why it's important for you as the applicant to make sure you come back to the TMDSAS application and update your coursework at the end of each semester, and then also update your planned enrollment so that it actually reflects the courses that you're taking. All right, another question from Jillian here. For employment, if I held a job for 2 consecutive years through college, I still choose either, even if my hours differ throughout the year. I'm not entirely sure, Jillian. If you can follow up with kind of a little bit of an explanation of what's going on here, I'm happy to help with that employment question. I'm going to start it on my end, and then we'll come back to it once I get clarification. But we can go ahead and address your question about research. Should I enter individual studies separately, even if they're in the same lab with the same PI? I think this is something that's dependent on you. What the schools are looking for in the research section here is obviously you enter the name of the research activity. This could be something that you're doing extracurricular outside of coursework. And what the schools are looking for here is an understanding of research and the scientific method and applications of it. You do have the ability, if it was published, presented, or created a poster, you are able to provide additional details or a citation on here. When you say that they're individual studies performed in the same place, depending on the outcomes, I might list each one of the activities as one, perhaps if they each resulted in some sort of publication, or if it's working in the same lab that produced different outcomes or produced different type of work, you might enter it all under one activity. So this is something that is going to be a judgment call on your end, since you know your activities best. So hopefully that's something that helps. And you have a follow-up question around the leadership section. Do I put the organization in the role, or should I use the description box for that? So in the leadership section, you have the ability to enter the title of the role. So for example, like president of the organization, or accountant for the organization, secretary, vice president, whatever. Entering the name of the organization, you could include that down here in the description. So you could say president up here, and then down here you could say of the host organization at my school, or the SNMA, Pre-Med Society, Pre-Dent Society, etc. All right, let's see if we got a follow-up from Jillian. Not yet, but as soon as you can provide me a little bit more details about the employment question, happy to address that one. And then last one I have so far, should I use past tense for work that's occurring but had to be cut off? Yeah, in terms of tenses in your application, you can use present tense, past tense, future tense. That's not something that you're going to be scrutinized on in your application, especially in the activities section. So just use whatever you believe is most accurate. All right. Leanne has a couple of follow-up questions. When I selected yes for publications, can you explain the difference between the general research activity description versus the publication description that allows for more characters? Sure. So back to our research section here. So in the first part, we have, do you have any significant research activities to enter? Include publications. Other examples may include participation in research through class, employment, or volunteer experience. So for example, up here, you might write that you are, let's see. Here's where you're going to test my creativity to see how quickly I could come up with a sample research question. How effective Clorox is at cleaning pond water and neutralizing organisms in pond water, for example. You might put up here ecological study on effects of pond water, and then down here you kind of describe what that is. If it did result in a poster, publication, or presentation, if it was published somewhere, you would come down here and actually describe where it was published, what it looked like. Maybe you presented it at an organization or a conference, or maybe it's published somewhere that you can provide a hyperlink or a reference to for the schools to be able to take a look at. So that's kind of essentially the difference between what the top question of research activities looks like, and then what the second question looks like, and what we're looking for there. Yeah, so you use that extra space for names of each abstract and publication, authors, title, whatever the schools might need to find the work that you've been doing on that. All right, Bruce, hi. When will reporting for the cycle be available again? Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, with some of the implications of the Supreme Court ruling, we have to make a few changes to our reporting as well. That's currently down right now, but we're working on getting that up by the end of the month. So thank you very much for bringing that up. It is something that we're actively working on. So appreciate your patience on that. Leanne, can I include a publication that is in preparation but not yet submitted? I think that if you feel that it's very close to being submitted or may end up resulting in a publication or presentation within the next year, I think you're very welcome to include it on there, especially since the work's already been performed. Abigail, hello. What if we earned any career certifications? May we put those on your application? And if so, where may we put them? That's a great question. We get that so often. I would say if I were in your shoes, the best place to put them would be in either academic recognition, if it's some sort of certificate program, like for example, some schools do, instead of doing a minor, they'll offer a certificate. So you can put that on here. Or if it's something like a certificate program to do, like for example, if you are a pharmacy tech or you're working as a pharmacy tech or working as an EMT, it requires a certification. You might include that under non-academic recognition. Again, these two will show up in your chronology of activities at the end. So it's very easy to kind of pinpoint, oh, Abigail has this certification over here. Or maybe somebody's a Six Sigma or has completed a project management program. That would be either academic recognition or non-academic recognition, depending on the nature of the certification. Great question. All right, Justin's got some questions here. Thank you for the earlier answers. I'm in a PhD program, and in my transcript, many courses have class hours or lab hours, but no number listed in the credits. That's a great question, Justin. Later in the PhD, we have placeholders like summer independent research that have NG as a grade, but no credits listed. How should I document these? I would recommend, let's see, for NG coursework. So first off, graduate coursework won't show up on your PCR. So that's important to note. Here I'm going to pull up just a sample here. Excuse me. I'm going to add a course here. So for graduate coursework, you would enter graduate, whichever area the course is taught in. So for example, with some of those courses that you're taking right now, they might still be regular class. Let's say it's genetics, what would it be, like 501 or something along those lines. So here you only have the option of selecting a science, non-science, or statistics course. So this would be other science. We mark it as other science, again, because graduate coursework will not count into your PCR, but it will count into overall BCPM. So for your grade, here we have a few options. I hope that pop-up is showing up on y'all's end. But we have a few different options here. We have A plus, A minus, etc. And you said you have NG. I'm assuming that's like a no grade type course. If that's the case, completing there's an option for incomplete, but that's not accurate. So we may have to have a further discussion, Justin, about what your official transcript looks like, how graduate courses are graded at your school, and what the equivalence might be in terms of the regulations that we have to follow here in Texas for how courses are graded, because it's going to require a lot of follow-up. If you could send us an IM through the TMDSAS application, again, send a message up here, And there you have the option to send messages. If you could go ahead and send us a message on there, explain your situation. You can say that you talked to Enrique during the office hours, and we have some follow-up questions regarding how to enter your graduate coursework, and I'll make sure that our team is able to get back to you within 2 business days. All right, Leanne, if hours differ in certain weeks, is it all right if the cumulative hours are more specific or differ? For example, 10 hours per week over 12 weeks, but 107 hours total. So there you're only off by about 5 hours. That's not a big deal. So if some hours, you just put in the weekly average, so that would be about 10 hours a week. And then the total hours is 107. I think we can understand that a few weeks, maybe it was an hour or a couple of hours fewer. That won't be a problem at all. The issue comes when there are courses that are actually from different terms or cover different time periods entirely. Like, for example, if somebody likes to work full-time for Habitat for Humanity, for example, then you actually have a longer break between those activities. So in the summer, you might be putting in 40 hours, but then during the semester, you can only put like 10 hours because you have different availability. And so when we are actually entering activities that go like that, we have actually created a page here on the TMDSAS website. Let me go ahead and show you all here. Oops, wrong button. Wrong tab. There we go. So when we're actually entering activities that kind of have different situations, like for example here, an activity that had breaks in between, these we consider asynchronous activities. So you have to make a choice of whether you list each instance individually. Like for example, if you were only involved a couple of times a year, but there were gaps in the year where you weren't involved at all, you might want to mark it for each time that you were involved rather than as a whole year activity. Or if it's something that you're continuously engaged in, then you should select it as that single activity, but in the description actually include what those breaks might have looked like and give a little bit more context for why you would enter hours in a certain way. All right, Jillian, the application guide says to choose other instead of what term when work is continued instead of separating them. Yeah, that's exactly what we went over right now. However, I've worked 70 hours a week per summer, but 20 hours during the school year. That's exactly what we're talking about here. Jillian, you might, with this activity, with the information you've provided, you might want to consider entering it as one activity and then having the cumulative hours and average amount of hours that you spend a week. And then in the description say, during this period, I was able to work 70 hours a week, but then during the school year, I can only work 20 hours a week. And that's perfectly acceptable. All right, Rosny, how can you explain / present leadership experience during military service if you didn't do any academically? I think that's a wonderful question. One of our huge proponents for this leadership section is actually Dr. Judy Ann Kellaway. She's one of the folks that helped spearhead this actual activity. And we had her on the school panels earlier this year, back in May. And one of the things that she mentioned was when we're looking at leadership experiences, it may not always be a textbook leadership experience. You know, what you might expect with, I was president of this organization, or I had this position in this organization, or in this branch of the armed services, but rather, what are you doing to enhance your leadership? Thinking ahead, when you're a physician, a dentist, a podiatrist, a veterinarian, you're essentially a part of a healthcare team, and you have to be accountable to other members of your team, and you also have to provide leadership to other members of your team. And so when we're talking about that, leadership doesn't always have to show up in formal ways. And so, for example, Rosny was asking for military service leadership experiences. You may have taken courses that may or may not be included in a military transcript that you could actually use as examples for your leadership experiences. If there's something that you can disclose about your service that provides additional insight into your development as a leader, that's something you should definitely be including in your application. So don't limit yourself to formal roles of leadership, but rather think about what you've learned over time and how that helps you become a better healthcare provider in the future. All right. Leanne, am I allowed to write incomplete sentences or bullet points in my application? Is this not encouraged? It's a mixed bag for some schools. Some schools like the narrative, other schools don't really pay attention to the format. I would recommend perhaps providing a shorter narrative rather than going into bullet points. I think it gives a better sense for what you're doing. But if you feel that the character count isn't sufficient for you to share with sufficient detail, then perhaps bullet points might be the best option. Then you're very welcome to do it. But as far as the formalities, we don't have a specific set of guidelines, and the schools don't follow a specific set of guidelines. I think it's all just preference from what we've heard from our member institutions. All right, Madison, first question. Thank you for joining us, Madison. When writing the personal essays, am I not supposed to refer to any specific events already mentioned in the activity section? That's a great question. So you want to optimize the amount of space that you have in your activities, because there's not a lot. I mean, you're seeing 500 characters here, 2,000 characters there, but at the end of the day, you're really putting your year's worth of experiences into one place. If you have activities that really dug into your personal essays, then I highly recommend to not stop yourself from mentioning them, but don't use the essay as a place to reiterate everything that's already in another part of your application. So perhaps you might say, I was engaged within this activity, and then if somebody's reading your essay and says, that's an interesting activity, they might go into your activity section to say, oh, Madison actually volunteered as a vet tech or worked as a vet tech, and I want to learn more about their experience there. So don't feel limited to having to re-explain everything. The schools have access to your full application, especially between essays and activities. So don't limit yourself there, but do be cognizant of the different limitations of the space within the essay. So I think just a quick mention of it, and then if the schools want to know more, they can go back to the activity section. All right, excuse me. Also, if I shadowed many vets in one clinic so that I cannot fit all their names in the namespace for vet experience, how do I enter the names on that page? Another great question. So here, we're going to go back to the application. All right. So for our veterinary applicants, there are actually 2 additional experiences that they have access to: the veterinary experience and the veterinary and the animal experience. So for a veterinary supervised experience, the options that you have here, as Madison mentioned, not much room here. You can actually use the description to mention the different veterinarians that you may have worked with, and then perhaps the head veterinarian or the top couple of veterinarians that you may have shadowed up here. Again, the big thing that the veterinary schools are looking for is specifically which practice, which they can get from a couple of veterinarian names, and then what you did in that specific activity. Also, if I could come back to your question about the essays, one big thing, especially that our veterinary schools wanted to emphasize, is when you take a look at the different essay questions. I'm sorry, I have selected multiple schools. I'm going to do it as if I were only a veterinary applicant here so we can look at this together. So for veterinary school, we have the first prompt: please describe opportunities and challenges, vet-related or not vet-related, that you have experienced and how these helped you prepare for your veterinary profession. As you're entering the different activities, or as you're mentioning those activities, mention it very lightly, but be very sure that you're answering the question, the opportunities and challenges that you experienced, and how these helped you prepare for the veterinary experience. So even more important is to just use a casual mention of an activity, like say, I shadowed, oh God, what's my vet's name? Dr. Mo. I shadowed Dr. Mo at a veterinary clinic, and here's what we did. And then just that one sentence, and then say, some of the opportunities I experienced are X, and some of the challenges I experienced are Y. And here's how those experiences have made me a better candidate for the veterinary profession. And this applies to everyone, not just veterinary schools. Make sure you read the essays and that you have enough feedback to really reflect who you are, the journey that you've undertaken. Y'all have taken years to prepare for this. And this is the opportunity to kind of give some insight into what it is that you've been doing to prepare and what you've learned along the way. So one of the tools I recommend always is the STAR method, STAR, for situation, task, action, and result. And I've given several examples of that in the application workshops and in different office hours. But essentially what you want to talk about is there's a moment of inspiration that happens, but then how do you transfer that motivation? How do you transfer that moment of inspiration into motivation to improve, to become better? And so that's something that's incredibly important as you have very limited space to really communicate what it is that you've done over the past, 3 to possibly even 10 years in preparation. All right. Leanne has a question about emailed verification letter for AP courses breakdown. Is it all right if my registrar only mails them? Should I notify TMDSAS to ensure if it's received? Yeah, we have a mailing address at the bottom of the application. Here it is, P.O. Box 217. Let me remove this so y'all can see it. P.O. Box 2175, Austin, Texas 78768. That will get right to our office. And we'll receive that. Just make sure that you're aware that, however long your registrar takes to produce that letter, however long the mail takes to send us the letter, and then our processing time for something like that. But it's not an issue. Your registrar can also email us directly at info@tmdsas.com if that's something that might be easier. All right, Justin, can we submit requests for letters of recommendation now before we submit our application? If our recommender sends their letter before I submit, will the letter still be connected to my application? Absolutely. In fact, your evaluation letters, the request for these letters is actually going to go up. This one's going to be weird because for veterinary schools, we actually have a different method for evaluation. So I'm going to switch to a random medical school so we can take a look at, because medical school, podiatry, and dental schools have the same process for letters. So once you complete the information here, you include the email address for the folks that are submitting letters. I recommend, and we all very much recommend, that you have them uploaded directly. That is the fastest method that we have in order to approve letters and get them to the schools as quickly as possible. Interfolio is taking us about 2 to 3 weeks sometimes to be able to get those applications processed and into the system, and that's because Interfolio isn't fully connected to TMDSAS. So we have a lot of folks kind of behind the scenes for that. And similarly, they work on mailed-in letters. So I highly recommend the direct upload. Once you complete this section, you have to enter the 3 folks that are going to be writing you an evaluation. And then you hit save. As soon as you hit save, those emails are sent out to your evaluators, and we will process those letters even if you have not submitted your application yet. So once you're ready to submit, you can actually, the whole process for submitting letters is discrete from application processing and from payment. So if you do have letters that you'd like to submit, you're very welcome to do that. But don't wait to submit until your letters are processed, because it's something that's completely separate from processing your application. All right, Abigail. We recently renewed a certification. Do we put the date of renewal, or do we note that in the description section? With that question, I think you would just put that in the description section. There's no real section to post a renewal. I think for something like a certification, you might want to put the date it was received, and then you can mention in the description, I've renewed this certification. All right, last question. A title for one of my courses is too long to enter as it's seen on my transcript. How's the best way to enter a course that cannot be identical to my transcript? Madison, let's work on this as a team. Can you type in the chat what the name of the course is, and then we can work on this together. But we have seen that it's like masterworks of geological studies and blah, blah, blah. And then before you know, it's like 50 plus characters, you know. Academics, we love to make things sound as flowery as possible. So Madison, while you send us the formal name and then we can workshop it, I'm gonna go ahead and answer Justin's question here. I have 3 individual letters, so is it possible to create 3 letter requests at the same time, or do I have to make them one by one? So for your letters, you actually have to enter the information one by one. So for example, here, you know, Dr. Bruce Banner, the third, that is my health professions advisor, or actually, let's say that's a physician. Letter for medical application. They're going to upload directly because they're amazing. That's the email address that I'm using. I will waive my right to view the letter. Creates the letter request. It comes up here. So you have to do that for each of your 3 evaluators. Once that's complete, you can move forward. Because if you see here, I try to save the page and it's still saying that there are 2 missing letters. So you do have to complete the 3 in order to save this page. And as soon as you save, it sends out the actual request. Dave, welcome. I believe residency check is the last step for me in the way of my application being verified. Oh, I know that feeling. Let's see. I have a specific question that I messaged on the TMDSAS platform, but I'm having difficulty receiving a reply. If you feel comfortable with sharing some of the input, you're welcome to follow up here. If not, Dave, since you've already messaged us on the instant message portal, I can actually get with my team to follow up on that. We are within 2 days of 2 business days of responding to instant messages. So I appreciate y'all's patience on that. Abigail, do research papers for a class count as research activities? I think this is one of those questions that you might want to consider yourself, because you know your research activity best. The spirit of the question of research is for the schools, excuse me, is for the schools to see that you've engaged in understanding the scientific method and have the foundation for continuing research as a healthcare professional in developing in studying and identifying opportunities for improvement of the healthcare profession. If you feel that a research paper in your class maybe suffice to say that you have built that foundation, then I would definitely include it. However, if in class you perhaps did a literature review, which is still very difficult but is not full-blown research, then perhaps I might not include it as a full-blown research activity. Or if you took, for example, a research course that by the end of the course, you essentially have already collected data, analyzed the data, of course, at the very beginning, did your literature review, identified the issue, collected and analyzed the data, whether it be quantitative or qualitative or mixed method, and then produced a summary and a conclusion that would suffice as a research activity, I would include it. But if it's just a literature review or just any segment of those, I might not include it, because again, you're trying to show the schools that you have the foundation for this higher level of research that you'll be performing. All right, back to Madison. Here we go. I hope y'all have your collaboration hats on. We're here. We're going to do this together. Here is the super long class title: Honors College Summit Experience Course, Bones, Botanicals, and Birds. All right. Why don't folks in the chat here try to help Madison out with this, and I'll include my own answer. I'll give you all about a minute to enter yours, and I'll enter mine. And then Madison, you're going to have a few choices to choose from, if that's all right with you. Here we go. Ready? And begin. All right. Honors. And again, for those of you playing at home, the limitation for characters in a course in the TMDSAS application, let me get that for you. Honors College Summit Experience Course. All right, so it ends at the BO Botanicals. So I believe it's about 50 characters limit here. So anybody have a recommendation from Madison on how to enter this? In the meantime, I'm gonna post it on here. Let's say you took this as a junior. This is an honors course, so you can actually note it as such. I would imagine this is probably like honors type course, or perhaps it's even biology, something like that. Madison, I might do something like, since we've already included that it's honors, I might just do bones, botanicals, and birds. And that makes it very clear to the schools that this is a biology lecture type course. And then of course you're amazing, so you got A+ for that course. So that's one way you could do it. You could also do summit experience, but you know, some things like honors, since it's already included up here, it's implied that that's an honors course. College summit, kind of filler words there. Yeah, thanks, Leanne. Here we go. Summit experience, bones, botanicals, and birds. Thank you very much. So we have a few options here for you, Madison. I hope one of those will help. But I think at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that obviously that the title fits in that space provided, but also that it tells the schools what that course was about. Just remember that unless TMDSAS requests your transcripts, the schools won't even look at your transcripts until you receive an offer of acceptance for medical, dental, and podiatry applicants. And for veterinary applicants, it won't be until you receive an interview. And so what we want to do here, obviously, is we want to be able to match that course back to your transcript, which is why we need you to enter it as closely to your transcript as possible, if not exactly. If you do have to minimize anything, then do stuff that's kind of well known. Like for example, here with the example that Madison provided, honors, that's included as a course type, so we can take that out. Biology could become bio, etc. But if you try to reduce characters and stuff that isn't just as well known, then it gets a little fishy. All right, L. Harrison. Hey, saw that you guys were live. Welcome. I'm filling in for Sulema today. She's on a well-deserved vacation. Wanted to pop in and ask where's a good place to input where we write articles, extracurricular. That's a great question. We've been talking a lot about activities during this session, so I'm going to pop up my application. I'm actually going to take a quick drink. All right. So you wrote articles and you say it's extracurricular. So under extracurricular section, you would enter the type of activity. Say, for example, if you wrote articles, I would imagine this is like some type of writing activity. And you started this back in January of 2020, and it's going to go on through this year. You've committed 99 hours a week for 1,000 hours cumulative. I'm going to pretend, just going to enter information here, pretend that you're from Texas. I don't know anything else. down here in the description. If you have articles, perhaps as part of a journal, you mentioned plural of articles, you can include a link on here. We talked about that earlier in the session. So you're very welcome to include that if it's part of a collection, or if there are multiple articles, you might choose a few and include links for those there. So I hope that answered your question. All right. And I've got just a couple minutes left, but Justin got one in just in the nick of time. We need to submit our transcript after submitting our primary application. How does the process work? So no, you actually, for the vast majority of our applicants, you actually don't submit transcripts until you actually receive an offer of acceptance. If you're dental, medical, or veterinary, dental, medical, or podiatry applicant. For our veterinary applicants, you won't submit a transcript until you receive an offer for an interview. And so you have to wait to submit transcripts until we ask for them here at the office. So until you receive a request to submit your transcript, you do not have to submit your transcript. All right, Leanne, I have an abstract for a conference that did not post online, but was accepted and published. Can I add a Google link with a photo of the notification of acceptance? You're very welcome to do that. We mentioned earlier, you can add links to your activities. This gives me a lot more information, so I appreciate the follow-up. Since it was accepted and published, you might want to include that just as additional input. For research, you do have up to 500 characters, so that is an opportunity for you to use that space a little bit more to your advantage. And if you need to use a link shortener, I would recommend something like Google in order to make it fit on there. All right, we went through all the questions today. Again, I really appreciate everybody. Everybody's patience. I know this is a long journey. We are currently in month June, July, August, month 3 of the TMDSAS application. And so for those of you working on it right now, I just do want to reemphasize the application deadline is November 1st. I know we talk a lot about applying early and what does applying early look like. I think right now we're at the midway point. So submit your application if you haven't already. And we are all here to help. If you have any questions for us, give us 2 business days and submit a private message to the TMDSAS portal, and we are very happy to help. Thank you for putting up with me today. Sulema will be back next week to help answer your questions. And on behalf of everybody here at TMDSAS, the Texas Health Education Service, and all 21 member institutions with TMDSAS, we want to wish you all the best of luck, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.